Very good. Hi, my name is Yvonne Bustecker with OLFA North America, and we have Roseanne Kermes here. She's going to demo some of our products. One is our OLFA Frosted Advantage rulers, and she's going to go through what some of the markings are for you and what you can do with them. And during the process, she's going to use one of our 12 by 17 folding mat. If you haven't used these yet, I keep moving the mic, sorry. It's great. You can fold it, store it away, take it with you to go, and then fold it out when you need to work. And she's also going to be using our 12 by 12 rotating mat and the 6.5 inch square frosted advantage ruler. I started with that one. And our splash rotary cutter. And there's a couple other tools here that she'll talk to as she goes through.
Okay. Thanks, Yvonne. Ready to go. I think one of the things that a lot of people forget is that OLFA has really great rulers. And I've been using the Frosted Advantage rulers since they first came out. A couple of things I like about them is they don't slip when I'm moving my fabric around. They're clear, even though they're frosted. But the other part of it is that the lines, you can see the lines on any fabric. Even though the lines are printed black, when you put it on black fabric, you can still see your cutting lines. You can put it on any print. They really show up clearly. And the other thing I like about them is they never seem to wear away. I know with some rulers, the numbers and things wear away with use, but they have always been there. I've been using them for a long time and haven't replaced my rulers except to get larger rulers. So I just want to show a couple little tricks you can use. I think a lot of people forget that they can do really simple cuts using the ruler lines. I know we always think that we need to have templates for certain works that we're doing, but that's not always the case. So one of the things that I like is when I'm making half square triangles, I first cut my square to whatever the size is that I'm going to be using. If I'm making half square triangles that are going to end up to be 4 inches finished, I'm going to cut my square to be 4 7/8. And then what I'm going to do is line my ruler. I'm going to use the 45-degree line on my ruler to make my cut. I know a lot of people just kind of like eyeball it. It's like, oh, that kind of looks like it should work and stuff. But then your triangles aren't square. So I line my 45-degree ruler along one cut edge. I make sure the top is right at the tip of that. I just double check to make sure that I'm down on the opposite corner. Open my blade, and one of the things is I open and shut my blade whenever I'm cutting. Make my cut just like that, close my blade. Now one of the little tricks that I have for making half square triangles is I always cut my strips with the right sides together so that when I'm done cutting, I just have to put a pin in there and go right to my sewing machine. I don't have to worry about them slipping or having to match them back up, because anytime you have to match it back up, then you're running the risk of your seams not, your piece not being square. Now, if I'm doing triangles that are quarter square triangles, so that means I want to divide my fabric into 4 pieces. I want to cut my fabric so that it's 1.25 inches larger than my finished squares are going to be. So again, I'm going to, and this time I'm using the rotating mat. I don't know if you've seen the rotating mats before, but they're great. They spin around. They just move. They're smooth. When they're on their table, they're not wobbly. They're flat on the table, and they're great for this process. So I've got my triangles lined up following the lines of my mat. My first cut is going to be using the 45-degree angle. Thank you. And I'm going to cut. Oops. It's always important to get those things lined up. I'm going to cut once this way to make a quarter, so almost like I'm making a half square triangle, but now I want to turn the rotating mat so I can do it again. Lining up my 45-degree line, making sure it matches at the corner. And I do it again. And so now I have two pieces, the right sides are together, and I'm ready to take them to sew them into my object.
Can I show this real quick?
Sure.
Let me know if you can see it. Can you see it good? So these are the lines that she's talking about using. So she's using the 45 lines here. So these are the markings she's going through.
One of the nice things about doing the quarter square triangles like that is it's a great way to do flying geese. So if you had, I know these aren't going to fit, but if you were making flying geese, that would be your center, and then you just put your other triangle on the other side to make the other part of the flying geese. This is not accurate. Don't don't do what I say, but that gives you your other part for flying geese block. I think the other little trick, and this is a trick that I like to teach my customers because a lot of people don't know how to do this. You know how when you are making binding, you a lot of times will put the two right sides together and you'll draw a line from corner to corner to get your stitching line, and then you will stitch on that and you'll hand cut it apart. Well, this trick it makes it so much easier. So now I've already cut a piece of fabric that's my binding strip. It's 2.5 inches wide. And I'm going to cut this top edge. Oh, let me go back up. I've got both fabrics facing up, so the right sides are facing up. Have them so they're nice and even. I'm going to lay my 45-degree line on the outside edge. And now I'm going to cut off this little piece. You could save that, make it into something else because you have a nice triangle. And now, when I turn them, they're going the right direction so that I can piece them. And the angle is there. It's like magic. And this is a trick that I love for making binding. It's a shortcut, fun to do. Doesn't waste a lot of fabric, and they're accurate, and you don't have to mess around with the seam. So let's see, what other kind of things can we do? Here's another way to cut triangles, and my measurements aren't going to be perfect on this, but if you put your pieces right sides together, you can use to make half square triangles. You can just take a strip that's cut to the, using the math that you would use for triangle math. I lined that line up with the edge that's been squared.
Is that your 45?
That's my 45 line on the cut line. And then there's another triangle. And then I can take my ruler. It's always awkward when I'm not at home. There we go. So now I'm taking my 45-degree line, and I've got it placed on the cut line from before. I'm lining my markings here so it's even with that cut edge. And now I have triangles that when I sew them, the dog ears will be, they'll be right, and there'll be dog ears that you'll just trim off. So, but let me tell you just a few more things about some of the other tools that I love from OLFA. Like I said, the Frosted Advantage rulers are my favorite. I use the 6x12 the most, and I use the 6x24 probably equally as often as I use the others. But OLFA also has, this is a 9x9. That's great for squaring up larger blocks. Again, this one just has the 45-degree line on it, so it's easier for sewing, trimming those bigger blocks or cutting quarter square triangles. The 4.5. Wait, is this 4.5? Yes, it's 4x4. 4.5 by 4.5. I always have to look. This is great for smaller pieces. And we all love those 6-inch types of blocks. Those are things that are great. Some of the other tools that I like, and when I use them, OLFA has the straight handle edges, straight handles that are kind of a classic model for their cutting tools. I like the 28 millimeter one when I am doing paper piecing because I use that to trim off my seams when I'm getting ready to add the next piece of fabric, and they just fit well in my hand. I also use these when I'm making Dresden plates, and using a Dresden plate template. And you can't go wrong with the traditional OLFA classic. You pull down the blade, always making sure to pull it up. This is the one that has the nut on the back, and when you're putting them together and want to put that washer back, always make sure that the brim is up like it's a little cowboy hat. My all-time favorite scissors from OLFA, I don't think a lot of people realize that OLFA has scissors, is the 5-inch applique scissors. I do a lot of wool work, and I use these to cut wool. The thing I like about them is they're sharp right up to the edge. I don't have to worry about the tip maybe being blunted where I can't get into a corner or to cut smoothly. They aren't serrated, so they make the curves of flowers and leaves accurate, and they are lefty-righty. So if I have a friend who's left-handed, she can use my scissors as well. I don't use this one as much. It's a little bit because of the things that I cut, but this is another OLFA scissors they're hefty, and I do use this size probably as much as I do the applique. And I use the larger, they're almost like a shears for cutting bigger pieces of fabric and things. And these are serrated, that's right. And of course, you can't go wrong with the OLFA circle cutter. Now, I'm not going to demo this because I wanted to talk about the rulers today, but the OLFA circle cutter, if you're cutting any kind of circle from small to big, this is a great product. It's almost like when you are in carpentry and need to make a circumference. It's got that method to it because it has a pivotal point that you move around, but it has the ratcheted control. I don't know what to call it that way, but that makes it easier for you to control how the circle is going. It's not cumbersome. That's just the thing that I like about it.
We have a video on our YouTube page.
Yeah, there is a video on YouTube that is really handy. This one, I don't know what's the 18 millimeter. I use this on and off, but sometimes it's like a handy little one to have, And I don't see my favorite one, which is like an OLFA touch knife. Oh wait, I have one in my pocket, but because you know what? I carry them in my pocket all the time. And here's another. The OLFA touch knife is a great little tool. It has a little controller, just pushes the blade out and back. So great for that as well. Excuse me. Well, that's all I have. I hope it's enough. I hope you've learned a couple things.